The toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. Now I'm going back and I'll be analyzing every word the same way we always have done, beginning first with the verb, of course. Now in this case, I'm not going to be circling prepositions. That was a tool, a method for learning about them, but right now we're working with our entire sentences, so we'll label prepositions and objects of prepositions exactly the way we label any other word. Okay, so the toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. Our squeezing is the verb phrase. Squeezing is the main verb. Are is the helping verb. You say that now. Good. What are squeezing my feet? Careful now. Toes are squeezing my feet. Therefore, toes is the subject. Label it. Now you ask the question, go. Now this brings up, so you see, a point that we need to pay attention to. It's advanced because really toes are squeezing my feet doesn't really make sense. We see here we have a prepositional phrase. Of is the preposition of what? Of shoes. And it is describing the toes. So it's the toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. That makes sense. The subject with its modifying adjective. Those together make sense. But this subject doesn't necessarily make sense. That's why we learn about these constructions, so that we won't get distracted. So, going along, the is an adjective describing the noun, toes. Now here we come to the key point. Of is a preposition, I'll put P-R-E-P. These is an adjective describing the noun shoes. Of what? Of shoes. Shoes is the object of the preposition of. So the toes of these shoes are squeezing what? The toes of these shoes are squeezing feet. Therefore, feet is the direct object. And my is an adjective describing the noun feet. Now we will continue to box our prepositional phrases. So of these shoes is a prepositional phrase working as an adjective describing the noun toes. So draw your box around the prepositional phrase and let's draw an arrow from that box to the noun that it's describing. Okay. Now I'm going to go through this sentence the way I ordinarily would and analyze each word out loud and the groups of words. Then I want you to do that, to practice. Remembering everything in order, this is training our memory as it applies to grammar and sentences and language, and that's a good thing. Okay? The toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. Are squeezing is the verb phrase. Squeezing is the main verb. Are is the helping verb. What are squeezing my feet? Toes are squeezing my feet. Therefore, toes is the direct object. Toes is the subject. Toes are squeezing what? Toes are squeezing feet. Therefore, feet is the direct object. So I've got the spine there. The is an adjective describing the noun toes. Of these shoes is a prepositional phrase working as an adjective describing the noun toes. Of is the preposition. Of what? Of shoes. Therefore, shoes is the object of the preposition of. These is an adjective describing the noun shoes. My is an adjective describing the noun feet. So you see how much we have to analyze now that we understand. Some of it is habit. So we can rely on that as long as we have been completing each lesson and doing the speaking. We are sitting on a horse, the horse of habit. It does what we tell it to do. We don't have to train it each time. The new part is speaking it in sequence, all the parts of a sentence, because we've already even practiced prepositional phrases. Okay, let's go to number 2. So let's take our clean piece of paper, wide rule paper. Okay, and begin. Well, maybe I just won't use a back sheet because that doesn't quite fit. So we will begin with the title, as always. Yeah, I've got a back sheet there already. Okay. This is lesson 8-2. Diagrams. I'll skip 2 lines and put number 1. And let's see, I'll look at sentence number 1 now, right? So, the toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. So I slant my paper to write nice cursive. The toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. Okay, so you copy it too, and then I'm going to put in my red labels, and I'm going to be thinking my speaking or saying it softly to myself as I do the labeling. You see, we keep reinforcing that logic to train our thinking. So let's see, are squeezing is the verb phrase, squeezing is the main verb, are is a helping verb, what are squeezing, toes are squeezing, toes is the subject, toes are squeezing, feet direct object, the is an adjective describing the noun toes, of is a preposition, of what? Of shoes. Shoes is the object of the preposition of. These is an adjective describing the noun shoes. My is an adjective describing the noun feet. Okay. Now again, when we copy these, we do box our prepositional phrases. We always do that because that shows in 2 dimensions exactly what's happening. With this group of words, we need to create a habit of seeing groups of words as one in our mind, in our understanding, you see. And then I, again, draw that arrow to the adjective described. Then, by looking at the sentence, I can see everything about this sentence very clearly. But still, I'm going to draw it now in 2 dimensions. So I don't need any rockets, so I'll just skip 1 line there. Toes are squeezing my feet, okay. So I've got my long line between the subject and verb. So are squeezing. Toes are squeezing. So now toes are squeezing feet. Okay. Put a little closer. The toes. And it's the toes The toes are squeezing my feet, so we'll put in our adjectives and then I'll show you about the prepositional phrases, okay? So do that much. Pause if you need to, because now we need to talk about how to diagram a prepositional phrase. It actually makes great sense if we know that adjectives are under the nouns they're describing. So we know that this is really one thing, it's an adjective, it's a box, it's an egg. Even though it has other things inside it, it's an adjective. So logically speaking, this box can go here and should go here because it's an adjective describing the noun toes. Now, agree with me, even if you don't. Makes sense though. So I could write of these shoes, all three words, right underneath toes, and that would indicate that of these shoes is an adjective describing the noun toes. That makes sense. However, that's not how we diagram it. Almost, but not exactly. Because we are so smart now that we can look inside the box and see the difference among these three words, the differences. Of is a preposition, of shoes. Shoes is the object of the preposition of, and these is an adjective describing the noun shoes. Because of that, we can show how these other words are working in the prepositional phrase. We can show it in our diagram, and we do, and here's how we do it. We're still going to use this line, but we're going to put only the preposition on that line, okay? So let's do it. Of. Okay. Now at the bottom of that line, and I want to make sure I've come down at least 2 lines, and maybe even 3, maybe even 4. We can go down as far as we want, really. But I don't want to squeeze. So at least 2 lines. So now of what? Of shoes. The object of the preposition we're going to put down here. Oopsie. See here. Okay. Eraser ever ready, right? Okay, so there we are. So, of, we're going to draw this line right here on the bottom of what? Of shoes. Shoes is the object of the preposition of, and so I'm going to write shoes on the horizontal line at the bottom of shoes. And then, because I have an adjective, right, describing the noun shoes, these shoes, well, we know adjectives go under the nouns they're describing. Shoes is a noun, so what do you know? I'm going to put these right underneath shoes because that's how we know how to diagram adjectives. And there we have it. The toes of these shoes are squeezing my feet. Now I didn't put in the. Now it's complete. You see, so the prepositional phrase working as an adjective describing the noun toes is still under the noun it's describing because it is an adjective. But we are so smart we can divide the words up to show how they're working individually. And there we are. So not so difficult, right? It's still just an adjective.